Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Hillary Johns, and she is the managing partner for Hillary Johns Trial Lawyers. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so Hillary, what made you get into law?
I'm a huge fan of Perry Mason, and I watched him all the reruns. I was, his series stopped, I think, before I was born, but then my parents were fans, so they would watch it. And that was I wasn't allowed to watch much TV, but I liked that. And so I got to watch the reruns, and I was a big fan of his and Della Street. And I'm like, I can make a living doing that. I want to do that.
Right. What, your background. So before you opened up, your own place, what did you do leading up to that?
I was very fortunate. I actually just had lunch with him yesterday to be having super mentors. I had in law school, I had a very nice man named Chris Emily who taught me a lot. I had my first two employers were really good, really well-known trial lawyers. I don't mean just big names, but they were good. They took a lot. Really did a lot for me in terms of mentoring, teaching me how to street fight and what really worked, what trial work really is. And they're still good. Both of them are still good friends of mine, and we keep in touch and go to events together. I don't mean just because someone's a big name or a big firm. These are really good lawyers who really have similar values to me, taught me the ins and outs of trial work, dealing with clients, what the real issues are, because, it looks so glamorous and interesting when you see it on TV and you see it in court. You see very well-respected lawyers making their little speeches and things, but more than 95% of it is just hard work that you don't see. And I was telling my staff, I think we were in our storage looking at some files. I said, this is the non-glamorous work, but all that really goes into it, and how lucky we are to be a part of that system, and to maintain the dignity of the profession. And we are very lucky in what our responsibilities really are. And then I just did a lot of trial work, and I invested heavily in learning a lot of other different skill sets in different areas of the law. For myself, I thought that was important. I've seen it so many times where a client will say, well, I need a real estate attorney. Oh, we only do business agreements. So the client has to go, my partner used to be general counsel of a major insurance company. And so we don't understand our insurance policy. How does that work? Well, you have to go to an insurance attorney. We know how to help them. We don't do everything. We're not jacks of all trades. It's not possible to do that. But if you can diversify your skill sets, I think, just generally, not just lawyers, it's helpful. I'm sure when people come to you, if you don't know how to fill out a certain schedule, oh, you have to go here. You can imagine it's frustrating and expensive. So what we do is try to create a safe space, but really learning those. And it takes years and years and years, for example, to know how copyright infringement litigation works, or to maintain current and understand how to prepare commercial releases and litigate them. So I really worked on not just litigating. I think when I was newer, I always thought everything was like Perry Mason, where you just go in and you fight, but there are a lot of other aspects of it, drafting, advising clients, and learning how to do both, because we get a lot of clients coming to saying, I went to this firm and I like them, and I went to this firm and I like them. One does transactions, one does litigation, you do both. So there are certainly other firms that do that. They tend to be larger firms, but learning all those and making sure sometimes you have to get knocked around to learn. There's no really good way to litigate other than doing it. And if you think you can read it in a book or see it on a video, you're sadly mistaken. And anybody who tells you they haven't lost hard cases or hearings, they're just not telling you the truth, and may not be someone you want. It's sort of like when you see a football game or something, no one's ever lost a game. How do you think they're going to handle it when they do? Yeah,
Right.
you really want to be the test case for that because I wouldn't, you know,
Yeah,
it's,
right.
it's, or how they'll react the first time they're told no. There's a lot that goes into that. And I think the nice thing about being a lawyer is you're always learning things. The law is constantly evolving. I think it tries to reflect society and keep up with it. It's usually a little behind, but constantly learning. And I just think it's very interesting and I feel very privileged that I'm able to provide services and to be a lawyer. And
Mhm.
actually in DC as well, near you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, what is your advice to business owners, even if they've been in business for a while, when it comes to, you know, their contracts, their any of the copyright stuff that they've had, their digital marketing that they're doing, employment agreements and stuff like that. How often do you think that they should have that looked at, refreshed, revised, or whatever?
I think they should every couple of years. In addition, I think they should develop a good working relationship with an attorney who they can call. We have several business attorneys or business clients that they call us. They know they can call us like, "Hillary, I need you to look at a lease." Or, hard to call and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Could I look at it? And look at it and let me know." In addition, I think they should ask their attorneys, say, "Look, if there are any developments that you think I should know, tell me." Because usually we ask that of the client. Clients, we're certainly not going to solicit clients, but ask them, there may be changes in the law. We've had clients who come back to us years later and we haven't seen them. And they said, we're good. We'll get in touch. Okay. Do you want to be? No, we don't. And then I'm saying, okay, well, this agreement you had 6 or 7 years ago, there's been a lot of changes here. For example, employment law. Employment law changed very, very fast. And non-competes, that's not
Yeah,
really allowed anymore in most
right.
places. I still get these people saying, well, we're having a non-compete or you have a confidentiality agreement that's this big. It's not going to work. It's probably not even legal to say that and things like that. So we really advise them, particularly with employment and business contracts, have someone review it. Most attorneys, particularly in, I would say, small to medium-sized firms, will give you a reasonable rate, particularly if you're a repeat client. Like I said, and talk to them about a budget. Most attorneys, I think, are sensitive to that. If you go to a huge firm, they're going to say, "Look, this is too small for us unless you want to pay us some ridiculous amount of money," which
Sure.
probably isn't that. There is not because they wouldn't do good work with the cost. I know the old adage, people used to go with them because they want to know they're serious. That's not the legal landscape anymore. People understand they're good attorneys throughout and say if you have a good attorney who will advise you as to those. I do think you need to have a list. I mean, you need to say, here are my business agreements. Here's what we use when we work with vendors. If you have copyright, say, for example, you work with something where maybe you have a factory you're running and there's confidential things you don't want people to see. People come in, have to sign it, because maybe they're seeing things, maybe they're seeing how you do business. Maybe they're seeing something that's being invented or produced and things like that. No taking pictures, things like that. And they seem
Right.
simple enough, but would you really want somebody coming? I wouldn't want somebody coming in my office and taking pictures and going, okay, well, who's sitting there and where are these files? I don't want people doing that. And it seems like those basics. If you have a copyright, make sure you renew it, or a trademark, there are renewal registrations for trademark, make sure you're doing that. Is it accurate? Are you using it on social media? Social media, there are things you can and can't say. For example, how is a bad review going to be handled? If you're online, you're going to get a bad review, whether you have it taken down
Yep.
or complain about it. There are haters out there. A lot of these people are on the internet. We have a few matters where these people, it almost seems like it's a part-time job for them writing negative
Yes.
reviews. And they go out and they're reviewing everything. It's like those people are out there, but you need to protect your permanent reputation. It might not always be a good idea to get into it with them. And it may not be, to leave 1 star is not defamatory,
Right.
but to leave thing and say this person is a criminal, they've done this, that is defamatory. Is it really worth suing this person or can you have it handled another way? I know a lot, I know some business owners have taken to doing that because more than 80% of people these days look online at your reviews. They decide if they're going to go there. Make sure you do it legally. Periodically get people say, "Oh, I'll just have a bunch of fake names and do a bunch of reviews." Don't do
Yeah.
that. It is illegal. You'd be surprised how many people are still going for that. It makes sure your content is accurate. You may not want to take sides politically. You need to be careful. Also, make sure your website is ADA compliant. In compliance with
Right.
American Responsibilities Act, you've got these plaintiffs' attorneys, and we get them that are just trolling.
Yes.
They're just trolling, and there's statutory violations, and they know that. So they do these volume businesses, they send out a demand letter, they don't even get the names right sometimes. But once you get that, it triggers the duty, and they know that they're gonna get a statutory violation. Though they may, and there's excuses to that, and they know how expensive it is to litigate. Make sure you have adequate insurance and that you have read your policy and understand it. Because I get this a lot, if some client gets sued or gets a claim, and I say, well, do you have insurance? Oh, yeah, I have insurance. Can I look at it, please? And I look at it and I go, we'll tender it, but it's saying there are exceptions here. Oh, there was an add-on, but I didn't buy it. Okay, well, the policy is what it is. And if you
Right.
can tender it, but sometimes people say, well, my broker arranged, I didn't really read it. I just signed it. I thought it's like auto insurance. You kind of figure everything's covered, right? You don't really
Right.
think about that. And, it's, look, most people aren't experts and, are really adept at reading those policies. Have someone read it who understands it and ask these questions. We have business clients that call us up and say, could you read this? I'm like, yeah, this is what I'd recommend. How much more is it going to cost? Oh, it's going to cost a lot. Talk to your tax preparer or your accountant and
Yep.
say, a lot of these fees that you're paying your attorney or paying a little more, you may get back on the back end. You may be able to recoup it as a tax deduction. We don't give tax advice, but we do tell them if it's business related, you may. You get
Oh,
it in.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's something, that you're touching on that's very important for people to understand is that, any of the legal work that you have done on your business, reviewing contracts, giving you advice and things like that, that's all tax deductible for, 100%. But to me, the important thing is that, yes, it's going to cost me now to have you do the work, but it's going to cost me probably 6 to 10 times that if I don't have the work done. Because there's going to be the gaps it's going to fall in, or the contract's not going to be right or anything else. With AI and everything else that's going on, and there's all of the .coms that are out there for legal services and things like that. I guess what's your words of wisdom on that?
Yeah, a few things. One, they're not lawyers. Two, they don't know you.
Right.
Three, they may not even be preparing something that's legal in your state. If I had someone AI prepare something here and I screwed up, it's malpractice.
Right.
One, pulling something off the internet is not always a good idea because you don't know how it was created, by who it was created, if it's even right, or if it was even done applicable to your state. It could be an old document. I know these people sell documents.
Right.
It's one thing, once in a while, we've seen sample pleadings, we use them, but they are filed documents with the court. We also verify sources. You cannot currently trust AI because you don't know what it's generating. There was an attorney in New York last year who prepared cites, a brief, like an AI brief. A lot of people heard about this in federal court, and they weren't even real cases.
Yeah.
So you really, and again, it's a lot cheaper. It's like, oh, good, I can pay $59.95 and get this, or I can pay my attorney $4,000 or $5,000. Which, wow, I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay $4,000 or $5,000. But then you get sued and the contract isn't enforceable and it's void and things like that. AI is not reliable. I mean, they even have with case sites, they have to put a use of AI. I have all our staff check our sites because if we don't do it, it's a mistake. And we have cases where we litigate and they'll say, I read the case, it doesn't say that. That's not what it is. There's no such case. That's not going to work for you. Imagine if an attorney, a plaintiff's, eager plaintiff's counsel, you get a claim and they want to sue you, or you want to sue the defendant, and they're saying this contract's unenforceable. I provided work, tough. You gave me money. You have no proof of what it says. You're looking at a lot. Do it right the first time, and get it done and review it. And look. I'm not saying there aren't legitimate contracts in there online that they do. But think about it, why would anyone really voluntarily give away their stuff and their work unless there was something in it for them? So maybe promotional materials, sure, but they're not going to, or maybe to show their knowledge so they can get more clients. They're not, they're not going to give, it's just common sense. They're not going to be giving you important legal documents. There's confidentiality unless there's something in it for them usually.
Right.
There may be some people who are very generous and just want to give. That's not usually too many of them in the commercial markets. It's been my experience. There are a few. I'm not
Right.
saying, or, we've shared documents with colleagues. Hey, do you have such? Sure, we'll send one over to you that's, filed so you're not violating privilege or anything like that, or something, or a draft that has no names in it. Sure, we do that, but that's a different matter. You really have to work to get this right. It doesn't mean it's gonna be months and months and months of fighting and, hundreds of thousands of dollars of fees or tens of thousands of dollars of fees, but it may cost you a bit. But if you can recoup this and prevent that, for example, have someone read your insurance policy, make sure that's what it's covered. If not, if you tender a claim or you have an accident or whatever it is, and you think it's covered and it's not, you can appeal to the Department of Insurance, but I don't know how that's gonna help you.
Right.
They'll say, well, didn't you read the policy? Also, this is one that's come out in a few states, Montana and some others. Make sure you have your endorsements attached to your policy when you get a copy. If you don't, those endorsements may not be applicable to you anymore. I
Right.
know that weird things like, well, I paid for the endorsement, but you don't have an endorsement. Do you really think that claims adjuster, whoever screwed up, is going to admit? Because they're probably not, even if they're still there. And they have thousands of cases on their docket. The amount of volume that they do is amazing. Get your endorsements and get them attached to the policy. Even get them certified, they'll do whatever certification as to authenticity. Because if you ever have to file a claim, those extra endorsements and riders may be what protects you. And say, here, there's this here. A lot of attorneys don't read the language. Make sure you have one who knows and understands what it says. It's really not, it's like any other document, but make sure you have coverage. Make sure you know what it is. Make sure you know what the exclusions are. Like, for example, a lot of people don't know, if you get a defamation claim and it's against you personally, you may have coverage on your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, or even your renter's insurance for damage, personal damages, like personal physical injury damages. You may have coverage there. It's worth looking at and asking. And once you tender it and they cover, they have a duty to defend. You could recoup all that money. We had a very nice client a couple years ago, and we were able to successfully it meant we had to, new counsel came in, but we told her, she's like, we'd love to have you. I'm like, we're not on their list. I'm
Right.
sorry, but that all her fees were covered. And whatever got worked out, that she kept in touch, whatever got worked out, she had insurance coverage for that. It saved her so much money. And that's, insurance is not in the business of giving you anything. They don't
No.
make their money.
No,
They take your
they're in the
premiums.
business of collecting money from you for sure.
Exactly, and your premiums. And so they're not gonna say, and some of the insurance is a great deal. Because they're using and but they're not in the business of saying, oh, we're here to help. This is not, the whatever charity you go to, they're not doing that there. But make sure that you understand what it says, because I guarantee you that the claims adjuster, the broker, and the broker may be very knowledgeable, but they're not in the business agreement either. They're not going to tell you that because they're not allowed to.
Right.
Otherwise maybe making material misrepresentation. They go, oh, well, I got an email, or I talked to them, they said I'm covered. That doesn't matter. What is in that agreement, signed in writing and paid for, is what matters. So make sure it's in there. And they say, oh, I have this from the claims adjuster, they'll just get fired, or they may not even work there anymore. Make sure it's in writing, not an email. Oh, you're covered. It's in the policy. And say, look, I can't get this policy until, if you need to get temporary insurance, in the meantime, will you work that out with them? Do it.
Right.
Because it's not worth going uncovered. It is just not. It'll be that one time you're not, and they'll say, sorry. They'll be more than happy to say, oh, there was a time period of, 14 or 15 days where you had no coverage. Sorry, I can't help you.
Right. From the standpoint of, contracts and other agreements like that, you've touched a lot here on making sure you have the proper insurance cover and it's documented. What are some of the other common mistakes that you're seeing the business owners make when it comes to their agreements?
Not having a fully signed copy.
Mm-hmm.
Not initialing each page. When you get an agreement, it's 4 or 5 pages, for example. They look at it, their name's on it. Sometimes their name's not even correct, the date's not filled in. Initial each, whatever you do, DocuSign or Adobe can do this easily. Send it over, sign and initial each page. If
Right.
you don't do that, you are setting yourself up for a potential problem, because people will switch things in and out. Make sure when you read an agreement that you understand what it says. A lot of these provisions, for example, have a prevailing party attorney's fees clause in it. So if you get in dispute, do you want to be paying their fees? Do you want to agree to that? Or maybe you want that in there. That has been a huge deterrent for some clients of ours. because they know if there's a dispute, someone's gonna wind up paying attorney's fees,
Yeah,
and that gets settled. There's also what's called an indemnity provision. And it means if you get sued, or someone may say, if I get sued for any reason, you're gonna pay it. You might want to watch for that if you have that in there, because that's something that's very important too. You also have to look at the meat and potatoes, because sometimes they'll put things in there. For example, arbitration, that's usually not a good deal for a small business, small to medium-sized business. It is very expensive. We've had a client recently, I'd say, you know, understand that arbitration can cost you up to $10,000 a day. Because
wow.
the default one is the AAA arbitration, because everybody used to use them. They're good. I'm not saying they're not. They're very, very expensive. Very expensive. And sometimes they'll put in, have a 3-panel judge. Why do you need 3 arbitrators? If you really, you know, I also recommend consider mediation
Hmm.
as a lesser, you know, maybe put, like, for example, we often do is we'll put an agreement. We have an attorney's fee provision, but to be eligible, you need to agree to go to mediation first. You're paying an
Okay.
attorney or mediator and saying, you know, and it's incentive, there's incentive there saying, oh, I can't recover that. And, you know, maybe this is something that can be worked out, that you can do. Often a lot of these people will run off to small claims. I would say too, if you're going to make a payment, you know, make sure you've done your due diligence, that you know who these people are. I see this a lot in construction, for example. Like, people have, like, you know, do construction, or they don't check out a contractor, they don't make sure the person's licensed. Don't just read their online reviews. That
Right.
could not be legitimate. Make sure you have some ideas doing business. I would also say in your agreements, I would look at, if they're providing a service to you, do they have insurance? Are they
Right.
carrying insurance? Have they shown you proof of insurance? And if they're doing that, maybe if it's like, sometimes these vendors will want you to sign a contract for 2 or 3 years. If you're gonna agree to, you wanna make sure they have services to that effect. If they don't provide services, what's that gonna be? And if they really do have insurance. And if there have been any changes, because that may help you in the
Yeah.
long run. Because sometimes you can't go after them, but maybe you can tender the claim to their insurance carrier. So those are the kind of details I think that people don't really think about. They don't think about what goes wrong. I'm just not gonna get paid. Is there a time frame in an agreement when services need to be performed? I would also look at, you know, who's going to be involved, and what if things don't work out? How is that going to be handled? For
Right.
example, if you have a 2-year agreement and 4 or 5 months in, you're like, this is just not working out. Well, you paid on a contract. Well, I want out. Okay, well, you're still gonna have to pay us. So you
Right.
pay $5,000 for a 2-year contract that you don't use, and they did a lot of work and cost you a lot of stress and time, and then you had to go hire someone else. Maybe look into that about what that's going to be. So, for example, if you can negotiate a partial refund, say you pay for a year, it's 2-year contract, you pay each year, and you paid for the year, they only did 4 or 5 months of work. Could you negotiate a partial refund for services not rendered, even for the 7 to 8 months? Can you do something like this? People don't look at these things. They say, well, you already committed to this and we've already spent this. And some of these people are off to the races and we pocket your money the second you pay it. They
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
yeah, they do. And again, I'm not gonna judge who does what. I'm saying if they provide services, great. But, you know, there are ways to do that, but make sure they're properly licensed, properly insured, and that there's some way to resolve this if it doesn't work out, as a refund, as mediation, because otherwise what you're looking at is, you know, expensive legal action that may not, you know, I can't tell you how many people come to us and they've been drafted a little better, and maybe they had these protections in there, and then it does help to negotiate too. Say, like, we have a procedure in place, you've agreed to it. So initial each page, make sure everyone signs it. Make sure they have insurance and you have insurance for this and it's been read. Make sure there's an indemnity clause that's not gonna bite you. Because they may say,
Right.
well, I got sued by such and such because of this. And make sure that that they have properly trained people working and what's gonna be done about that. You know, even a vendor has a duty to do workmanlike manner is this phrase. And that
Right.
doesn't just apply to construction. That applies to people are coming over and fixing the vending machines, or people who are doing computer work. You know, a lot of these places will hire people who have no idea what they're doing. They don't, and they send them over, they don't pay them very much, and it's good experience, and they do a volume type business. They make sure you have the right test. you're not being a bad person by going over and saying, look, there's a difference between someone who screams at the waiter because, their soup is a half a degree too cold. That, I'm not
Right,
talking about
right.
that. And as opposed to saying, look, I really, this person is really struggling here. They're taking up a lot of time. Maybe could you send someone else and say, look, I'm not, or you don't like them, you have a right to have a vendor comes in appropriately dressed, ready to do work. It's not abusive or hitting on your staff. And, is responsive, and if they're saying, look, I need to talk to my supervisor and it's prompt. I mean, that's not a lot to ask. If they're not, maybe they need to look at how they're conducting business. But you need to have something in writing that says working in like manner and some sort of mechanism to resolve a dispute, because having that in there often resolves the dispute before it starts. If they're not willing to do that, that could be a red flag to you. That maybe that's something we want to do. I'm not gonna lie to you, if I had a potential client who came in and they're making extensive revisions to our retainer agreements and they're talking for 2 or 3 weeks, that's a red flag to me, they're wrong.
Sure.
But it is, and saying, oh, I don't really want to do, what is this? It's like, certainly they have a right to it, but, we've said no to clients who, it's not, I don't care if they should ask questions. And I always tell everybody, don't sign anything unless you understand it. The other thing you should think is, when I sign this agreement, do I want my attorney to look at this? Do I understand it fully? Is it worth calling my attorney and saying, hey, could you take a look at it? I gotta do today. Please give your attorney some lead time, at least 48 hours. If they're in
Yeah,
trouble, sometimes I get these, I'm going right now. I'm like,
right.
okay, and we're set up for that. And we do, because we work in a lot of industries, for example, entertainment. They forget to tell me that they have to sign this. I'm like, when are you going? Well, I'm driving over there right now. I'm like, right now? You're going over now?
Yeah.
Please don't do that. Please at least give us the night before something. But if I, like yesterday, I was traveling, it would be very difficult to review an agreement and do that. And again,
Sure.
not everyone has the luxury to do that. I understand, but
Right.
um, you got to think about those things. And a lot of these things is preventative that can really stop a problem before it starts. And you get these clients who want the cocktail napkin. I don't want to scare anybody off. And why do I
Yeah.
have to do this? It'll probably never happen. And say, well, I agree, but this is what could happen.
I
And
think, yeah, I mean, I think anybody that is doing business is not going to be afraid to sign an agreement, or they shouldn't be. And if somebody wants to do work with you that isn't willing to sign an agreement or give you an agreement to do work, I think you really need to think about that, because how are you protecting yourself? And you can say, oh, well, they did work for my sister or my dad or whatever, which is fine. And maybe they got lucky all this time and there wasn't an issue, but you need to have these agreements because things happen. Same thing with insurance. The reason why you have insurance is because things happen. Um, what from, so obviously, the listeners today have really gotten, it's like, okay, hey, we need to make sure that we have the agreements. We have to make sure that we understand them. We need to make sure that we have, insurance, and we understand what we have and things like that. Um, what have I not asked you that you wish I had?
take a look at your leases, your business leases. Make sure you're making the best use of those there. I would also take a look at your social media, making sure that you're being presented the way you want to be presented. Stay clear of any kind of hackers. Have a policy in place. If you can think ahead, it takes a lot of work. It's like doing your homework ahead of time. Make sure you have a policy about how to deal with certain things. For example, if you have a policy about how to deal with a vendor or client who's abrupt, that may save you an employment claim. If you have a policy about how you're dealing with your social media, depending on what kind of thing you have, make sure you're doing that ahead of time. And I would also, in addition to insurance, make sure you're in compliance with the current state of the law. If you have an attorney or someone who can tell you, for example, I've had clients who go, I didn't know I needed a compliant website. You do. Do
Right.
you want to get updates from someone in your industry who's helping you with that? And when you're a small business owner or medium-sized business, it's expensive. So
Mhm.
make sure that you get people who are sensitive to that you're working with. Some of these people will just give you these ridiculous, we got a bill from a vendor the other day. I'm like, and they made a mistake on it. It was 3 times more than we usually pay. And I looked at it and I go, this isn't right. And I sat there and I said, well, there's this. Don't be afraid to ask for the discount. It doesn't
Right.
mean there's a difference between a discount to make it reasonable as to nickel and diming a
Right.
person.
Right.
Have a budget for that. And people usually know. There's some people, if they're not willing to do that, maybe you ask around. Just because someone says they're the best or the reviews say they're best doesn't mean they are.
Right.
I would also say that there are a lot of small businesses that do great work. And I agree with you, Gary, that just because someone knew such and such and they did a good job as their handy person, but I don't really know who they are. Maybe they got lucky or, but again, if they're, for example, working on your computers or near your computers and they steal something, you think your client or your people you're providing services are really gonna care that you didn't do your
Right.
due diligence? And a little bit of due diligence can go a long way towards preventing a
Oh, yeah.
lot of it. It's gonna happen if you run a business. You are going to run into people who are gonna cause trouble for you, and you're like, oh God, it's almost not possible to avoid all of it, but you can avoid a lot of it by preventive.
Sure.
And just say no. And if you get a feeling like, think about it, is it about the money? Is that you have to do this, or are you really not good with it? If you're not good with it, you do your gut check.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the right person to do business with. Unless you're out in a very remote area, and I get it, we have people in different areas. Some of these people are like, yeah, the only game in town may not be the best game for you.
Right. 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 Hey, really, if people like what they hear in our discussion and stuff, and they would like to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
They're more than welcome to me at hillarytriallawyers.com, Hillary with 2 L's. And you're also welcome to call, which is 310-492-4009. And please mention that you listen to Gary's podcast, because we all should be doing this. Lots of
Great.
good stuff to learn.
Yes, yes, yes. We do have some pretty good topics, that's for sure. Hey, I really appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. This was fun. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Great. This week, our guest was Hillary Johns with Hillary Johns Trial Lawyers. I will see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.